It was a quiet day on Earth when the unexpected happened. A ship unlike anything humanity had ever seen appeared in the sky. It was massive, hovering silently above the major cities. Its surface gleamed with a strange metallic shine, and it seemed to pulse with an energy that made people stop and stare. No one knew who they were or where they came from. For days, the world watched, waiting for something to happen. Governments around the globe scrambled to figure out what to do. Were they friendly? Were they here to invade? The tension was unbearable. The aliens, however, made no move to land. They simply watched from above. Then, one day, a message was broadcast across every screen on Earth. The voice that spoke was calm and clear, but its tone was not one of peace. It was the voice of the aliens. "We are the Exor, a species far more advanced than your own." The voice echoed in every language across the globe. "We have watched your planet for some time. Now we offer you a challenge." The message continued, and every person on Earth listened intently. The Exor spoke of their technological marvels, their superior intelligence, and their unyielding strength. They boasted of their achievements, their ability to solve problems in ways that humans could never dream of. And then they issued the challenge. "You are primitive," the voice declared, "but we are curious. We wish to see if any of you are capable of solving a test of speed, a test of intelligence. We will provide the challenge. You will answer. Fail, and your species will remain beneath ours forever." The challenge was clear. It would be a test of mental agility, a race against time to solve an impossible puzzle. But there was one catch. The aliens would use their supercomputers, the most advanced technology in the universe. They would calculate answers in seconds, while humans would have to rely on their minds alone. The world reacted in a mixture of fear, confusion, and defiance. Who were these aliens to test humanity in such a way? But there was also a spark of hope. Could humans, who had come so far despite their limitations, rise to the challenge? As the date for the test drew near, the world prepared. Scientists, mathematicians, and engineers were all called upon. Governments set up teams to help train people for the challenge, working around the clock to prepare for what was about to come. Despite all the effort, however, there was one thing that no one had predicted. Amid all the preparations, one person stood out, a man who was not a scientist, not an engineer, but an average citizen. His name was Jack. He was a teacher, someone with no special skills in technology, but someone with an immense love for solving problems. Jack had always been fascinated with puzzles and games of logic. His friends often teased him for spending hours solving crosswords or trying to crack the codes in old books. But Jack never cared about winning any accolades. He just loved a good challenge. When the aliens announced their test, Jack wasn't intimidated. While others were studying advanced algorithms and complex computer programs, Jack simply sat down with a pencil and a piece of paper. He felt no need to rely on supercomputers or fancy tools. He believed in the power of the human mind, the ability to think critically and solve problems without the aid of machines. Jack was confident that if anyone could beat the aliens, it would be a human, using nothing but the simplest of tools, pen and paper. Jack's decision wasn't popular with everyone. Many thought he was foolish, naive even. "The aliens have supercomputers," they argued. "We have nothing but basic tools. How can you possibly win with just pen and paper?" But Jack knew something that most people didn't. It wasn't the tools that mattered. It was the way you used them. It was the creativity, the adaptability, and the resourcefulness that defined a person. While others relied on complex systems, Jack believed in the simple power of the mind. As the day of the test arrived, the entire world held its breath. The aliens, in all their might, had set the stage for humanity's greatest challenge. People gathered around screens, watching in awe as the countdown began. On one side, the aliens prepared their advanced technology. On the other side, Jack sat alone in a quiet room, holding nothing but his pen and a blank sheet of paper. The puzzle appeared on the screen. It was an intricate pattern, a series of numbers and symbols that seemed impossible to decipher. The clock started ticking. The alien supercomputers hummed to life, processing the puzzle in a fraction of a second. But Jack didn't panic. He leaned back, took a deep breath, and began to think. While the world watched in silence, Jack's pen moved steadily across the page, solving the puzzle step by step. The mission's goals were simple: send a ship into deep space to demonstrate humanity's ability to explore beyond its own planet. But the complexity was in the execution. Every country was contributing to the mission in some way, whether through technology, expertise, or resources. The collaboration required unprecedented levels of coordination and trust, and as the deadline loomed, the pressure mounted. Hours before the launch, there were reports of last-minute obstacles. A technical malfunction in one of the international space stations threatened to delay the mission. A political disagreement between two countries on how to share the resources added uncertainty to the final countdown. But remarkably, these obstacles were met with quick solutions. Nations that had once been bitter rivals now worked together to solve the problems, their actions speaking louder than words. As the final moments approached, the air in the room grew thick with anticipation. Jack was at the heart of it all. An observer, a witness to the incredible changes humanity had undergone. He thought back to this simple moment when the concert had first unified the world. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, the real test was here. The fate of humanity was tied to this mission, and the unity it represented. The final countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The voice echoed in the command center, steady and calm, though there was a nervous energy that seemed to buzz in the air. Every person was glued to their screen, watching as the last moments of preparation clicked by. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The rocket began its ascent, the collective power of human ingenuity propelling it into the vast unknown. The cheers that followed were louder than any sound Jack had ever heard before. The mission was a success. The Exor had witnessed it all: the collaboration, the teamwork, the trust, and they knew that humanity had passed the final test. But it wasn't just that Exor that had taken notice. Humanity had proven something far greater. They had shown themselves that they could rise above their differences, that they could face the most daunting challenges and come out stronger. The mission was only the beginning. It was a symbol, a sign that humanity could work together to achieve the impossible. As the world watched the rocket disappear into the stars, Jack felt a sense of pride that he had never known before. The Exor had tested humanity's unity in ways no one could have imagined, and humanity had passed with flying colors. But the journey wasn't over. The mission to the stars was only the first step. There would be more challenges, more tests, and more obstacles ahead. But now, humanity stood united, ready to face whatever the universe had in store. And the Exor, with all their power and knowledge, would soon learn that humanity wasn't just a species to be watched. It was a species to be respected. The world had passed the test, but more importantly, humanity had proved something far more valuable. When united, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. And the stars were just the beginning. One evening, as Jack sat alone in his apartment, a strange feeling washed over him. It was as if he were being watched. He dismissed it as paranoia, but the feeling lingered. He glanced out the window, scanning the night sky. In the distance, the massive alien ship still hovered, a silent, unblinking eye in the sky. He had heard reports that it had not moved in days, but something about it seemed different. The air felt heavy, thick with anticipation. Was this the calm before the storm? Jack had no answers, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. As he turned back to his desk, his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden notification on his phone. It was a message from Captain Grant. She had invited him to a secret meeting with the world's leaders, a meeting to discuss the future of humanity's relationship with the Exor. Jack, the message read, "We need your insight. You've proven that the human mind can overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Your thoughts could help guide us through what comes next. Please meet us at the secure facility in 48 hours. Jack stared at the message. He wasn't a diplomat, a scientist, or a military strategist. He was just a teacher, a man who loved puzzles. But his victory had made him a key figure in this new era of human history. The thought of being in the room with the world's leaders and strategists was overwhelming, but he knew this was his moment to contribute to something much bigger than himself. He quickly packed a small bag and prepared to leave. The future of Earth, and perhaps the future of humanity itself, might depend on the decisions made in the coming days. But Jack was determined to stay true to what had gotten him here: his logical mind, his calm demeanor, and his belief in the power of human resourcefulness. The next 2 days were a blur for Jack. As he boarded a plane to the secret facility, his mind raced with questions. What did Captain Grant want him for? Why had they reached out to him? He wasn't a military strategist or a scientist. He had simply solved a puzzle. But maybe, just maybe, that was what they needed. The aliens had underestimated humans before. Maybe they were hoping that Jack could offer the perspective of an ordinary person, a perspective that might help them understand how humanity could continue to outsmart the Exor. When Jack arrived at the facility, he was led into a large, secure room filled with high-ranking officials from around the world. Captain Grant stood at the head of the table, her expression serious. Jack. She greeted him, her voice calm but firm. Thank you for coming. We need your help. We've been in contact with the Exor, and they've made it clear that they're not leaving. They've issued a new challenge. It's not a test of intelligence, but of something else. They want to know if humanity is worthy of survival. Jack's heart raced as he took a seat at the table. The room fell silent, and all eyes were on him. What kind of challenge? Jack asked, his voice steady. Captain Grant's eyes locked with his. They're not just testing us for intelligence anymore, Jack. They want to see if we can unite as a species. They want to see if we can rise above our differences and work together to achieve something great. They're watching to see if we can evolve, if we can prove ourselves worthy of being part of the intergalactic community. Jack's mind raced. He had solved a puzzle before, but now humanity was facing a much larger question. Could they work together? Could they truly put aside their differences and show the aliens that they were more than just the sum of their parts? The room was filled with murmurs of concern and disbelief. The Exor's challenge was no longer about technology or intelligence. It was about humanity's unity, its ability to rise above conflict and work as one. Jack looked around the room. He wasn't sure what the answer was, but he knew one thing for sure. Humanity had already proven it could rise to the challenge. The question now was whether they could do it again, this time, together. The aliens were still watching. And now, the real test had begun. The news about the Exor's new challenge spread like wildfire across the globe. The aliens, who had previously tested humanity's intelligence, were now testing something far more elusive: unity. Captain Grant's message to the world had been simple, but its implications were anything but. The Exor wanted to see if humanity could set aside its differences and work together. If they could show the aliens that they were more than a divided species, more than nations, more than cultures and ideologies. But as the days passed, it became painfully clear that unity would not come easy. The Exor's challenge had set off a wave of tension, with factions across the world disagreeing on how best to respond. The world's leaders had already begun their discussions, but the ordinary people were not so sure. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about winning a puzzle or completing a challenge. This was about the survival of humanity itself. The first cracks began to show in the unity that Captain Grant had hoped for. Countries began to question whether they should cooperate with each other or take their own paths. In some nations, leaders demanded total independence in how they handled the Exor's challenge, while others pushed for a global, coordinated response. National pride clashed with global cooperation. The United States, China, Russia, and the European Union each held different opinions. Some leaders thought they could outsmart the Exor individually, relying on their superior technologies. Others believed that humanity could only succeed if all nations worked together. A major divide was forming, and every time a new broadcast was made, tensions seemed to rise. Meanwhile, Jack, who had been invited to attend the high-level meeting at the secure facility, found himself sitting at the center of the world's most important conversation. He was just a man, not a politician, but his simple mindset had earned him a place among those making the decisions that could determine humanity's future. Captain Grant had been doing her best to keep everyone united, but she knew the challenge the aliens had posed was much bigger than anything they had faced before. It wasn't just about solving problems. It was about coming together as one. The greatest test of humanity was not going to be intelligence or strength. It would be the ability to come together despite their differences. Jack had been listening closely to the discussions. He knew the stakes were higher than anyone in the room had realized. To him, the solution seemed simple. Humanity needed to change. They needed to stop fighting each other, but the road to that change wasn't going to be easy. Jack, Captain Grant said one day as they sat in the meeting room, her expression grave. We've been trying to form an alliance, but the situation is getting worse. There are protests, even violence in the streets. Some groups believe that humanity's best chance of survival is to stay separate, to resist cooperation. They fear what might happen if we all work together with the other nations. Jack sighed, staring at the table. I know. It's a strange irony, isn't it? The Xer want us to unite, but we're tearing ourselves apart in the process. Captain Grant nodded. Exactly. The real test is whether we can show the aliens that we can overcome this, that we can work together despite our differences. But right now, it's difficult to even keep the peace. Jack looked out of the window, his mind racing. He thought back to the challenge that had brought him here, the simple puzzle. It wasn't the tools that had won the test. It was the way he approached the problem. He had looked for patterns, for connections, and had taken the time to consider every possibility. He realized that maybe this was the approach humanity needed. It wasn't just about brute force or technology. It was about recognizing the connections between people, seeing the big picture, and understanding that every piece, every individual, every culture, every nation, was part of a larger whole. I think I have an idea, Jack said, turning to Captain Grant. What if we focused on something that we can all agree on? Something simple, something that cuts through all the divisions. Captain Grant raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Music, art, the things that touch every human being. What if we could create something together? Something that shows the aliens that we don't need to be divided. A single, unified message through art, music, or even a shared experience. We can't fight the challenge of unity with more division. We need to show them that we can come together as one. Captain Grant thought about it for a moment. You're right. We've been focused on strategy, politics, and weapons, but maybe we've overlooked something simpler, something that truly shows the heart of humanity. The idea was radical, but Jack could see a glimmer of hope in it. He knew that the challenge wasn't going to be solved by technology alone. It wasn't enough to just outsmart the Xor. They needed to outsmart their own tendencies to divide and conquer. If they could come together as one, humanity in all its diversity, united for a single purpose, they might have a chance. Over the next few days, the plan began to take shape. Leaders from all over the world met with artists, musicians, and creators, working together to create something that could represent the heart of humanity. Something that transcended borders, races, and ideologies. The first step was organizing a worldwide concert, a massive, simultaneous event that would take place in every major city. The music would be simple yet powerful, a symbol of the human spirit. Each country would contribute its own style, its own voice, but the performance would be unified by a single theme. Unity in diversity. The goal wasn't just to entertain. It was to send a message to the Xor that humanity was capable of setting aside its differences for a greater cause. Jack watched from the sidelines as the plan unfolded. It was a far cry from the complex strategies and technologies that had once dominated the conversation. This was something more human, something that came from the heart. As the day of the concert approached, the world began to hold its breath. Would it work? Could the power of music and art really unite humanity, or would the divisions continue to tear them apart? Jack didn't know the answer, but he felt that the Exor were watching. They were waiting to see if humanity could truly rise to the challenge. The world's greatest test had begun, not just of intelligence or technology, but of something far deeper. Could humanity show the Exor that they were more than the sum of their parts? Could they unite and prove that they were worthy of the stars? The clock was ticking, and time was running out. The day of the concert arrived, and the world held its breath. For the first time in history, humanity was coming together for a singular, unified purpose, one that transcended borders, cultures, and differences. The concert wasn't just about music. It was a statement, a powerful demonstration to the Exor that humanity was more than its divisions, that it could unite for a common goal. Cities across the globe prepared for the event. In New York, a massive stage was set up in Central Park. In London, the famous Tower Bridge was lit up, symbolizing unity between nations. In Tokyo, an open-air theater awaited the performers, while in Rio de Janeiro, samba dancers rehearsed, ready to join the celebration. Every city, every country, was preparing for the same moment, the moment when music, art, and human spirit would become one. Captain Grant stood at the center of the operation, overseeing the massive coordination effort. She was nervous, but also hopeful. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The Exor were still watching, their ship hovering above Earth, and their patience was wearing thin. Would they see this as a sign of humanity's strength, or would they interpret it as a weak gesture, a final attempt at unity before the inevitable collapse? The world's leaders had gathered in a secure command center, anxiously waiting for the performance to begin. Jack, though still overwhelmed by the responsibility placed upon him, stood among them, watching the monitors and hoping that the message would come through loud and clear. He was just a small part of this vast global effort, but somehow his simple idea had become a beacon for the future of humanity. As the clock ticked down to the final moments, the nervous energy in the air was palpable. In every corner of the world, people were preparing to make history. The concert would begin at the exact same time in every country, no matter the time zone or location. Every note, every beat, every instrument would be in sync, harmonizing into a singular voice. Jack sat in a meeting room with Captain Grant and other global leaders. Tension filled the air as they discussed the next steps. There was no question that humanity had passed the first part of the test by showing unity through the concert, but the world was still divided in many ways. The recent challenge had forced the nations to come together, but in some ways, the cracks that had appeared before the test had only been temporarily covered over. "The aliens want more," Captain Grant said, her voice steady but concerned. "They've seen our ability to come together in a single moment, but now they're asking us if we can sustain it in the long run. The real test isn't just about one day. It's about every day, moving forward." Jack looked around the room at the faces of leaders from different countries. Some were still skeptical about the Exor's intentions, while others were hopeful. But one thing was clear. No matter how they felt about the aliens, they all understood the importance of the test. They had shown that they could come together, but could they do it again when faced with even greater challenges? One of the leaders, a representative from China, spoke up. "We can't rely on just one event. Unity is a process, not a one-time performance. We need to continue to build trust and cooperation between our people, or the Exor will see through our facade." The representative from the European Union nodded. "Exactly. The Exor want to see if we can keep this up. If we want to prove ourselves worthy, we need to keep working together in every area. Politics, economy, science, defense, it all has to be unified." Jack had been listening closely. He wasn't a political leader, but he understood the struggle. The world had shown its unity during the concert, but could it last? And more importantly, how would humanity react when faced with new, harder tests from the XOR? "They'll keep pushing us," Jack said suddenly, surprising everyone in the room. "The XOR will challenge us in ways we can't predict. But if we want to survive, if we want to prove we're more than just a group of divided nations, we have to think ahead. We have to make sure our unity isn't just about one big performance. It has to be part of everything we do." Captain Grant looked at him with interest. "You're right, Jack. The XOR will keep testing us. This challenge isn't over. But how do we move forward? How do we show them we can keep our unity, even when things get difficult?" Jack thought for a moment. The answer seemed so clear to him, though he wasn't sure how it could be put into action on such a grand scale. "We need to focus on the things that connect us, not just the things that divide us. We need to make the hard choices now, before the XOR force us to. If we can unite in ways that matter, economically, culturally, and politically, then we can show them that our unity isn't just temporary, it's real." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone considered his words. The truth was undeniable. The XOR wanted to see if humanity could build lasting unity in every aspect of life, not just during a performance. There were deep divides, historical, cultural, and economic, that had existed long before the XOR's challenge. Would humanity be able to bridge these gaps in the face of mounting pressure from an alien species? Over the next few weeks, the world began to work in overdrive. A new global council was formed, made up of leaders from every country, and it focused on addressing issues that could divide humanity. The council worked on resolving long-standing conflicts, such as trade disputes, resource allocation, and international cooperation in science and technology. The world's best minds, scientists, diplomats, economists, came together to draft a plan for continued unity. But it wasn't easy. Old rivalries and power struggles resurfaced. The progress was slow, and the pressure from the XOR grew with each passing day. Humanity had proven they could work together for a single moment, but now they had to prove they could do it for the long haul. The aliens were quick, calculating at unimaginable speeds. Their computers hummed as they worked through the problem. But as time passed, something unexpected began to happen. Jack, using nothing but his pen and paper, started to solve the puzzle faster and more accurately than anyone could have imagined. As the clock ticked down, the aliens' supercomputers slowed. Their process was complex, calculating millions of variables at once, but it wasn't as efficient as Jack's focused human mind. He thought through every step logically, applying patterns and strategies that only a human mind could recognize. And then, just as the aliens were about to finish their calculations, Jack reached the final answer. He had done it. With a single stroke of his pen, he completed the puzzle. The world watched in stunned silence. The aliens' supercomputers, which had been so sure of their victory, were now frozen in place. The test was over. For a brief moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, slowly, the crowd erupted in cheers. Humans had won. They had proven that even with the simplest of tools, their minds were capable of achieving the impossible. Jack didn't stand up to take credit. He simply smiled, knowing that this victory wasn't just his, it was humanity's. And for the first time, the aliens knew that the human mind could never be underestimated. The challenge was over. But for Earth, it had only just begun. The moment Jack solved the puzzle, the world seemed to pause in disbelief. For a brief second, no one moved. Then, the roar of excitement spread like wildfire. Humanity had won. The aliens, with all their advanced technology, had been outsmarted by a human armed only with a pen and paper. It was a victory for Earth that would go down in history. But while the humans celebrated, the XOR, the alien species that had set the challenge, did not react as expected. They didn't show anger, frustration, or surprise. Instead, their massive ship, hovering above Earth, remained still, almost eerily quiet. The alien voice that had once boasted of their superiority now spoke again, but this time there was a noticeable shift in its tone. It was calm, yet there was an undercurrent of respect. "Congratulations, human," the voice boomed, cutting through the celebrations of the Earthlings. "You have succeeded where we did not expect. The test has been completed, and your species has proven itself worthy of something greater than you realize." Humans were still buzzing with excitement, but the tone of the alien voice began to shift the mood. There was something about it that seemed different. Instead of gloating or issuing another challenge, the Exor were acknowledging the human victory. It was not something they were used to doing. The alien voice continued, now more direct. "This victory, however, is not just about intelligence. It is about something deeper. It is about resilience. It is about the power of the human spirit. We, the Exor, have seen civilizations rise and fall, but none have faced challenges with the determination and resourcefulness you have shown. We underestimated you, human." On Earth, people began to realize the magnitude of what had just happened. The Exor were not just acknowledging humanity's intellect. They were recognizing something even more significant: the power of the human will. Captain Elise Grant, the leader of the global council that had been working with the aliens, stood in front of the camera with a serious expression. She had been one of the key figures negotiating with the Exor for peaceful relations. Now she had to address the world. "Today, we have done the impossible. Today, we have proven that humanity cannot be so easily underestimated," Captain Grant said, her voice filled with pride. "The Exor may be technologically superior, but it is our determination and our adaptability that have won us this victory." Her words resonated with every human watching. The victory wasn't just about the test. It was about proving that humanity could rise above any obstacle, no matter how advanced or overwhelming it seemed. People from all corners of the globe felt a renewed sense of pride in their species. However, despite the victory, the Exor's message left lingering questions. If the aliens were acknowledging humanity's resilience, what did that mean for the future? Was this just a game to them, or was there something else in play? As Captain Grant ended her speech, she glanced up at the stars, pondering the future. What would the next step be? The Exor had already shown that they had the power to destroy, yet they had not. They had shown respect, but respect could be fleeting. She knew that humanity had to be careful now. In the days that followed, the Exor's presence continued to loom over Earth. No one knew exactly what the aliens were planning next. They had issued their challenge, and humanity had succeeded. But what would the consequences be? Would the Exor now try to take over Earth, or had they learned something valuable from this encounter? The aliens remained silent, their ship still hovering above the Earth. There were no new messages, no demands. They simply watched. But something was different now. Humanity, once fearful and uncertain, had tasted victory. And with that victory came the understanding that no matter how advanced a civilization was, the human spirit had the power to overcome. Back on Earth, Jack, the man who had solved the puzzle, had become a symbol of that spirit. He wasn't a scientist, a soldier, or a leader. He was just an ordinary man. But in that moment, he had proven something extraordinary. The human mind, when tested, could surpass even the most advanced technology. Jack's life, however, wasn't about fame. He wasn't looking for recognition. He had done what he loved, solving problems, and the challenge was no different. But now, people looked up to him. They saw him not as a simple teacher, but as a hero who had represented the very best of humanity. As Jack sat at home, flipping through a puzzle book, he had no idea that the entire world was still talking about him. To him, it was just another puzzle to solve. But for the rest of the world, he had become a symbol of hope. The Exor had tested humanity, and humanity had passed with flying colors. But now, the real question remained: what would the Exor do next? Would they leave Earth, defeated and humbled? Or was this just the beginning of something even greater, something that would require humanity to face new challenges, with new stakes, against a species far more advanced. The answers were yet to come, but one thing was certain: humanity had proven its worth. And whatever the future held, Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored or underestimated. The challenge was just beginning. Days passed since humanity's victory over the Exor in the speed test, but the world was still on edge. The aliens had not made any further demands or announcements. Their ship remained stationary, hovering high above Earth, watching silently. No one knew what they were waiting for. Were they planning their next move, or were they merely observing? The global community was divided in its reactions. Some celebrated the victory as proof of humanity's potential, while others feared that the Exor were simply biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Governments around the world remained in a state of high alert, constantly monitoring the skies, hoping for signs of the aliens' next intentions. Captain Elise Grant, who had been the face of humanity's response to the Exor, was troubled. She could sense the unease among the people, and she felt it herself. The Exor had given no indication that they were ready to leave Earth, nor had they made any move toward peaceful negotiations. They had acknowledged humanity's resilience, but that did little to quell the growing fear. What were their true intentions? In a meeting with her fellow leaders, she expressed her concerns. "We may have won the challenge, but this is far from over," Captain Grant said, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't afford to relax. The Exor have shown us respect, but we still don't know what they truly want. We need to be prepared for anything." The room was filled with nods of agreement. The world's leaders knew that the victory was only the beginning. The Exor were not a species that would give up easily. They had superior technology, and they had tested humanity in ways that were far beyond anything anyone could have imagined. Their silence was unsettling. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for humanity to make a mistake. Meanwhile, Jack, the man who had solved the puzzle and won the challenge, had become a global icon. His name was known worldwide, and people saw him as a symbol of human ingenuity and determination. But Jack, despite the attention, remained humble. He had never sought fame. He had simply wanted to solve a problem. Now, with the eyes of the world on him, he found himself wondering what the future held. Could humanity continue to surprise the Exor, or had they just angered a race far more powerful than they could imagine? Jack watched from the sidelines as world leaders made decisions that could shape the future. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, though he wasn't sure what role he would play in this new era. But he knew one thing for sure: humanity's survival depended on this next phase. The Exor were watching, and every move mattered. As the deadline for the Exor's next test approached, the world's leaders made a bold decision. They would unveil a new unified space exploration program, the first of its kind. It would involve every country working together on a shared mission to explore the stars. The program would symbolize humanity's commitment to cooperation, and it would show the Exor that Earth was not just a divided planet, but a species ready to reach beyond its differences. Jack was once again at the heart of the conversation. He was part of a team that would help design the first collaborative space mission, a mission that would prove to the Exor, and to humanity itself, that they were truly capable of unity, even in the most challenging times. The stakes were higher than ever, but for the first time in history, humanity was no longer just a divided collection of nations. They were working as one, reaching for the stars, and showing the Exor that they were ready for whatever came next. And so the test continued. But now, humanity had a real chance to prove itself, not just to the Exor, but to the universe. The final test from the Exor was upon them. The stakes had never been higher. After months of unifying efforts, the world had come together in ways that no one could have imagined just a year ago. However, the Exor had made it clear: unity, though impressive, was just the beginning. The real question was whether humanity could stay united through hardship and adversity, particularly when faced with a challenge that could shape the future of the entire species. The Exor had given humanity one final task, a task that would require every nation, every leader, every scientist, and every person on Earth to come together in a way that had never been done before. The challenge was simple in theory, yet nearly impossible in practice. A global mission to launch a collective space expedition to the stars. It was more than just a scientific endeavor. It was a statement. If humanity could manage to pool all of its resources, ideas, and manpower into one unified effort, it would prove to the Exor that they were truly ready to be part of the greater universe. The mission wasn't just about technology. It was about trust. Could humanity trust each other enough to combine their resources? Could nations set aside old grudges and political differences for the common good? And most importantly, could humanity live up to the promise they made to the Exor? In the final command center, Captain Grant stood alongside Jack and the world's leaders. The room was tense as the countdown to the launch ticked down. On every screen, there were updates from the global space agencies, NASA, the European Space Agency, China's space program, and others, all of them working together on the same mission. It was a beautiful sight. Nations once divided were now joined together for the greater good. "You've all done well so far," Captain Grant said, addressing the room. "But we're entering the final phase now. The mission will launch in hours, and we need to show that humanity's unity isn't just a one-time event. This is the culmination of everything we've worked for." Jack nodded, though the weight of the moment still felt heavy on his shoulders. The Exor had observed their every move, and they would be watching the launch closely. Every decision made in the coming hours could determine the fate of humanity. The first note rang out in New York, a powerful chord that echoed through the streets of the city. It was quickly followed by instruments from Tokyo, Rio, and London, each contributing its unique sound to the growing crescendo. The music flowed across the world, filling the air with a harmony unlike anything seen before. It was a blend of classical, jazz, electronic, and traditional sounds, each representing a different facet of humanity's rich diversity. The performance wasn't just about the music. It was about the message behind it, the message of unity and diversity. Each nation had brought its own culture, its own heritage, to the performance, but they had all come together in a moment of pure cooperation. The Exor were watching, and the world was waiting for their response. As the final notes of the concert echoed around the world, a sense of awe and wonder swept over humanity. For the first time in history, every person, no matter where they were, had shared a moment of unity, a moment that transcended all the divisions that had once kept them apart. The music had shown the Exor that humanity was capable of coming together, working as one, for a greater purpose. Jack stood in the command center, his heart racing. The concert was over, but the world's fate still hung in the balance. What would the Exor think? Would they see humanity's performance as a sign of true unity, or would they dismiss it as a desperate attempt? The silence in the room was deafening as everyone waited for a response. Then suddenly, a signal came through. The Exor ship, which had remained silent for so long, shifted. Its lights flickered, and then a communication channel opened. The alien voice that came through the speakers was calm, but filled with an underlying sense of awe. "We have witnessed your display," the Exor leader said, its voice echoing across the command center. "We did not expect such an answer. You have shown us that your species is capable of more than we thought. We recognize your strength, your resilience, and your ability to unite. This is not the end of your journey, but it is a significant step forward. You have earned the right to continue." The room erupted into cheers. Humanity had done it. They had passed the Exor's test, and in doing so, they had proven that they were worthy of a place in the greater universe. The aliens were not leaving, but they were acknowledging humanity's potential. This was not just a victory over the Exor. It was a victory for humanity itself. Captain Grant looked at Jack, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You did it," she said quietly. "You were right. Unity was the key. And now we have earned our place among the stars." Jack smiled, his mind still racing. This was the beginning of something much bigger. The Exor had recognized humanity's potential, but there were still challenges ahead. The true test was not just about passing one test. It was about proving that humanity could continue to evolve, to unite, and to thrive. But for now, humanity had won a crucial battle, and it had done so by showing the world, and the Exor, that they were more than just the sum of their parts. As the world celebrated, Jack couldn't help but think of the future. This was just the first step. The Exor had shown them respect, but that didn't mean the path ahead would be easy. But for the first time in history, humanity had proven that when they worked together, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. The celebration didn't last long. While humanity had earned a moment of victory by proving their unity to the Exor, the true weight of what they had achieved was only beginning to sink in. The Exor, despite their respect for humanity's newfound unity, were not done testing. The real challenge had just begun. In the days following the global concert, the Exor began to send more complex messages. The communication was clear. Your unity has impressed us, but we have yet to see whether you can maintain it in the face of greater adversity. Your survival will depend on your ability to continue working together. Captain Grant's team had anticipated this. The Exor weren't just looking for a one-time effort. They wanted to see if humanity could continue to adapt, evolve, and cooperate, even when things got tough. The test had been set up as a long-term challenge, and humanity was only at the beginning.